Hey, Colleen.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Colleen, tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been an agent?
Well, I've been licensed for about coming up on a year. Haven't done much with it so far. Just some rentals. But I'm looking now, obviously, for this class to try to find some way to expand on that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've been it for almost a year. What did you do before this?
I worked various jobs, nightclubs. I worked in marketing for like promotional marketing and stuff, healthcare, home health aid, just basically a number of jobs put together, but I'm really looking to focus on one career. And I really do love real estate. I worked in it a couple of years back before the pandemic, but I was just an assistant. So now that I've got my license, I'm ready to get into business for myself.
That's awesome. That's exciting. Well, congratulations. Yeah, the first year's tough. I think I'm not sure. It might have been two or three deals in my first year. So it's just it is what it is as you're gathering steam. So cool.
Yeah, I came out of the gate real strong with one deal, but it fell apart like in the last week. And I think it kind of traumatized me a little bit because it was going so well. And it was my first, and everybody's like, yeah, you're doing awesome. And then it just went pew straight down. So
Yeah, the emotional highs of real estate are high and the lows are low, right? So I get that for sure. Hey, Takai,
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, sir. Welcome. Deidre, good to see you.
Good morning, Robin. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. We're excited for your class.
Oof, that's a lot of pressure. But
No pressure. We're here
I'm
to
up
learn
to it.
from you.
I'm up to it. All right. Well, I think we'll just wait for a couple more minutes, but and then we'll get started. But today we're really gonna talk about how to build a list of non-Mets, right? So I think you guys have probably learned a lot about how to kind of work your spheres and how to, renters as your 401k and all of that is extremely valuable. We're just going to talk about how to kind of bolster that and how to add some leads for free that might not have occurred to you as ways to do it. So our real estate team, we do a lot of work with non-Mets. It's just kind of a big piece of our puzzle. We call expireds, we call FISBOs, we do a lot of that stuff, and I'll show you how to get that information here too. But I think that's intimidating for a lot of people, and it was intimidating for us in the beginning too. So I'm going to show you how to pull those lists, but I think one of the things that I'm really excited to show you guys is how to pull information around your own buyers. So I think that buyers are a little easier to come by, especially in the beginning of your real estate journey. And so we're going to talk about how to create some listing leads around your buyers. And on top of that, to be able to add a little, arrow in your quiver of your value proposition for your buyers. So we're going to kind of show you a little bit of both of that. So let's go ahead and get started. And if everybody needs to catch up, we'll catch them up. Let me get, all right. So, all right. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about creating your list of non-Mets or how to get information in general from the internet. So how do we, if we see an address, how do we find someone's phone number? If we see an address, how do we find who lives there to be able to use that information? So there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. Like I said before, we can look for expireds, we can look for, cancels, we can look for people that expired years ago. We have all kinds of options, but we're going to talk today about creating a list around your buyers. So, does anybody raise your hand, or just not raise your hand, I guess, but put a yes in the chat box if you currently have a buyer that you're working with. All right, so we got some yeses. All right, great. So, like I said, working with people that you don't know is intimidating. Calling expireds, if any of you ever tried it, it's a little tough. It's a competitive market for sure. Here's a little bit of a green space where you can work with your buyers and use them to help create some listings. So here's kind of how we do that. So in Bright, we have this thing called Remine Pro. It's free, which is my favorite price. So Remine Pro is free, so it's right under the market section in Bright when you log into Bright. And we're going to do this live in a second, but I'm just going to walk you through how we do it first. Okay, so when you load up Bright on the left-hand side, there'll be a little search function there. You're going to press on that, and then it'll pull up a map like this with a number of filters on the left-hand side, and you can switch between listings and properties. So listings is where you would go to look for expireds, for example. You could look up expired listings. You could also, use this as Bright already does this, but you could look up things that are for sale or things that have sold in different areas. But we're going to start with properties. So you're going to click on the properties function. And then you have this option here to the right where you can draw a boundary. This happens to be my neighborhood in Havertown. So you can draw a boundary around the neighborhood that your buyer is looking at. Okay. So one of the cool things that's about this process is that this is part of your value proposition going forward. You can say, listen, anybody can go look on Bright for properties for you, but what I'm willing to do is I'm gonna go the extra mile. And if you identify an area that you want to live in, I'm gonna look in that area for homes for you, whether they're on the market or not, right? And that's a pretty valuable value add to add to your buyers to say, hey, listen, I'm not just gonna wait for things to come up on the MLS. I'm going to make calls on your behalf to see if people want to sell in this market. And so that's definitely a nice piece of the puzzle to add when you're talking to buyers about why they should choose you, right? This is a definite value add. So it adds on the buy side, but it also adds on the sell side. So you're going to draw a boundary around your desired area. So in this case, we have something very, very small. This is an area of Havertown that I live in, and so you can draw a boundary around it. But we can also, when we do it live, I'll show you like a bigger area. If someone wants the entire, they want the Springfield School District, for example, we can draw around that, or they want a different area of Drexel Hill or downtown Philly or in Jersey. We can always draw areas anywhere we want with this little hexagon button on the top right. So we draw around the area, and then you can pick a number of criteria on the left-hand side. And we can use this to lower the numbers. So in general, we can pull every homeowner in this entire area, but you want to try and limit it down a little bit. So you can use this on the left-hand side, you can use this area here to lower down your area by ownership time, for example. So if you have a family that's looking for a 4-bedroom house in Havertown, chances are if someone's owned a 4-bedroom house for 20 years, they probably don't need a 4-bedroom house anymore, right? So you can condense your search by ownership time. You can condense your search by cell score, and we'll go over that. And then over here above, right above where it says the filter button, you can change the beds, the baths, the year it was built, the size. You can condense your search by what they want. So for example, if a buyer was to say, we only want, places that have 4 bedrooms and at least 2 full baths and a full basement, and you can go ahead and sort by those here. Now you can always do this in Bright, but you can't pull things that aren't for sale from Bright like this. Right? So this is a really easy way to do that. I mean, you could do it with public records, I guess, but this is a much easier way to do it. Any questions about that so far? Okay, so once you draw this boundary, you're going to get a list of homes. So in my neighborhood, there are 199 homes. So here's the list of all of the homes where I live. You just click the select all button, and then you're going to move them to your cart. Okay. And once you move them to your cart, you have to give it a name. When you put it in your cart, they'll make you name it. So you name it after your client, right? Robin Martin's dream home location. And then once it's in your cart, then you go into your cart, click on Robin's dream location, and select all, and then export here, and it'll export the leads. And then they'll ask you to name that file, and so you'll name that file whatever you'd like, and then it's going to pull an extensive amount of information about your properties, including phone numbers. Now, I'm sure you know by now, but it bears repeating, right? You want to be very careful with the DNC list and not calling DNCs, but you'll come up with the house, the mailing address, you'll come up with the phone number, you'll come up with a lot of email addresses. So if you wanted to write, emails to this group and say, hey, I have a buyer who's interested, and we'll go over that script in a second, but you can send emails, you could send, letters if you wanted to. You can pull all this information to be able to look around your buyers, to build a list around your buyers. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do this live. Let's see if I can handle the pressure here. All right. All right.
Robin, you're on mute.
Oh, that makes so much more sense. No one was answering me. I was like, oh man, it's a tough crowd. You guys are tough. All right, can you guys see my Bright page?
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, now we're on this. All right. So right here under Market, you'll see Remind Pro. We're just going to go ahead and pull that up. Over here. So I'll do this for somebody else. Who has someone who said they have a client. Give me a location that your client is looking, your buyer client. Marquise, do you have a buyer client? You're not on mute, so I'm going to pick on you. Do you have a buyer client?
I do. Let me look at the zip code really quickly.
You can just give me a rough area. It's all right.
Okay, so then I'll say 19121.
If I was a better realtor, I would know where that was. Marquise, but you're gonna have to fill me in. Where's 19121?
That is northwest Brewery Town, I would say.
All righty.
I think.
All right. So we'll go ahead and use that. Here we are. Now we're not in the listing side, but the property side. We'll go ahead and draw as far up as Diamond. What do you think, Marquis?
I'm gonna go with yes, with the disclaimer that I am a Jersey girl who is learning as I go.
All right, no problem. So we're going to draw around Brewery Town here. We're going to go a little bit. How does that look? And then I'll send you this list, by the way, so you can have it. All right.
Thank you.
All right. So that's a little bit generous interpretation of Brewery Town, but we'll go ahead and take it. Okay. So what is important to your buyer about what's important to your buyer? Let's add some filters in here.
So she wants something that is a little bit older, something that she's able to come in with her family and kind of make their own. She's okay with, it doesn't need to be all like, shiny and new. She wants to get her hands dirty. She obviously wants a deal. She likes that it is relatively close to green spaces because she has a dog.
You're making it really tough on me, Marquise. You're
I'm
doing a good
sorry.
job. No, that's all right. So
Payback's wrong.
that's fair. That's totally fair. All right. So tell me about the what's the bedroom count request?
3.
3 minimum. Perfect. Let's add another filter. What about bathrooms?
She never mentioned specifically bathrooms, but she does have a young son and a young daughter. So I'm going to guess at least two would be wonderful.
Got it. All right. So we're going to 2 bath minimum. Great. Let's see. So these are the things that we can search by year built. I'm trying to think how we could incorporate the fact that she wants to do some work on the property, but let's this parking is the garage important, parking important, not in Brewery Town. Good luck with that, right? Okay. Okay. So now that we're down to 1,000 results, okay? So now we're going to try and, that's a lot. Right, we're not going to make 1,000 calls. So now we're going to try and reduce it even more. Okay, so the ideal size of a list here might be a little around 200. In 200, we're hoping to get 50 numbers that we can actually call. That's roughly what our expectation is. All right, so let's go. Let's see. One of the cool things we can look at is home equity. We can find out how much home equity they have. We can find out what their mortgage rates are, which is pretty cool. So for example, if you had a lender partner and you wanted to look for people who have high mortgage rates for refis, but we're gonna use Cell Score here. So Cell Score is an algorithm that Remind uses to kind of determine what who's most likely to sell. And they do all kinds of things, including, the equity in the home, and then pieces of the puzzle that aren't actually in here. I actually had a conversation with them about what their algorithm is based on. It. They actually use a lot of social media information, some Facebook information. It's pretty robust how they create the Cell Score and Remind. But so we're going to go back to here, and we're going to just go to high Cell Scores. Let's see how that does for us. That's too few results. So we're going to do high and medium Cell Scores. That gives us 88 results. Okay. So now we have 88 people who are likely to sell in this neighborhood that have the same bedroom and bath count that yours does. So after this, right, we're going to select all on the right-hand side here, all these properties, 88 results, and we're going to put them in our cart. And we're going to okay, we're going to create Marquise. And we're going to add 88 properties to that cart. So now we can go into our cart, into Marquise, and we're going to find those 88 properties here. And then we're going to hit export. We're going to select them all and hit export. And then it's going to ask us what information we want. So we can actually, you can get a ton of information. If you want to know the equity, you want to know all of their equity in their home, you want to know what their mortgage loan balance is, you want to know what their mortgage amount was, what their rate was, you can get all of that information here through Remind. So I'm gonna export it all after we name this. Of course, let me capitalize your name, Marquise. I don't want to don't disrespect Matt. Okay. All right. So so that's going to download for me. And now I'm going to have an information, all the 88 people's information. And then once that comes up, I'll pull it up for you guys so you guys can see what the raw information looks like. In the meantime, we're going to pop back into what kind of conversation we're going to have with these people. All right. All right. So here, let's get this back on. All right. So perfect. All right. So as we're waiting for that to download, let's talk about the conversation that you would have with someone that you're calling around their buyer. Okay. And the conversation itself, it's pretty innocuous. I mean, I think this is on the scale of calls that you're going to make, to a stranger. These are pretty easy. You're going to introduce yourself. You want to have a story about your buyer because you want to make it personal. You're going to use a thing we call the accusation audit, which basically you're going to say, hey, listen, I know you don't want to sell, or I'm sure you don't want to sell, but do you know anybody in your neighborhood? And then you're going to ask if they're selling. So it goes something like this. Hi, I'm Robin from Keller Williams. I won't take up too much of your time, but I have a buyer who is looking in this neighborhood, and I want to turn over every stone I can for Jane and Michael, who are my clients, hence this call. I'm sure you've heard about this crazy market. Home prices in the area have gone up 21% since COVID, and homes are selling at 10% above that. There's just no inventory. It's crazy, right? And I'm sure you don't want to sell, but do you know anybody in your neighborhood who might? Right? Pretty simple. In general, there's a kind of magic to asking if anybody knows anybody that wants to sell a house, right? Like when we're recruiting for our team, right? I might say, hey, Marquise, I'm sure you're all set, but do you know anybody that might want to join an active team like ours, right? And if they feel like they want to sell, they are going to identify themselves. So you don't have to ask the direct question. You can ask it about their neighbors. Do you know any neighbors that might? And we're basically couching this listing pitch as a buyer pitch, right? And it's not dishonest because you do have a buyer that's looking in this area. You do have a buyer that wants to buy a house just like theirs. And so you're reaching out on behalf of your buyer. And hopefully you can, double end a deal. That would be great. But even, the chances of your buyer wanting to buy that specific house aren't obscenely high. But it's an opportunity to have an easy conversation with sellers and have a chance to do an extra service for your buyer and pick up a listing or two, right? So it's a pretty soft conversation. And let's see, hopefully this happened yet? Yep, it was ready 4 minutes ago. See, I did all that talking. And all right, so I'm going to share my screen again. I'll show you what that information looks like. All right, so this is all the information that we just got for Marquise's buyers in the area that they want to be. So we have the homes, the address. You'll see and then as we scroll to the right, we'll see all the information we really want. Here are the owner's names, right here in the middle of the screen. You'll see owner email addresses. Isn't that shocking, the number of email addresses that you can pull up there? Like that's half at least, right? Half of the people on this 88 people that we pulled from this list. This is all their email addresses. And here are the phone numbers. It is, and then you'll see some additional email addresses and some additional phone numbers. So you're going to run into a lot of DNCs. That's just the world we live in. But you're going to run into a lot of non-DNCs. So like, for example, this one here, it has 1, 2, 3. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. One of them is a DNC. This one has 2 that are not DNCs. You can see at the top, you have 2 that are not DNCs. So I don't recommend you call the DNC numbers, but there's a number of numbers in here that are not. That's why I recommend that you probably pull 200 to get the right amount of people to actually make a call around. But pretty robust levels of information that we can pull for free, right? And we can pull for free around our buyers. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Now, the other thing that you can do, which is pretty cool, is that you can actually make, when you're in this cart, you can actually send mailers right from here. And you can build a mailing campaign right from Remine, and they'll send those mailers out. And so you can, create a mailing campaign with them and send, letters directly to those people in your buyer's neighborhood. And you can, the way that the script for the letters goes something the same. It's really about your buyers. You're kind of telling your buyers, hey, got Jane and Michael. I have these, these 2 amazing people who are looking for a property in your area, and looking for a home just like yours. So we are looking to pair our clients with like properties, and this is just one of the services we do for a buyer. And then do you or anyone in this neighborhood, are you willing to look at how your home price has gone up 30% over the last 2 years, whatever that number is? And you can research that number. And we found out in a class that we took not too long ago, and there's another one coming up. Deidre, when is that class coming up where we can research the statistics on a particular area?
Is that a break class, Robin?
No, that's the class with the She Moves Philly. I can't remember. There's a class coming up where, anyway, as Deidre looks that up, where you can look up the stats, and I won't go into it here, but you can look up the stats for any neighborhood and give them really accurate information about how much their value has gone up over the last 2 years. And that all that information is in Bright as well. So yeah, so that's how we build lists around buyers. Are there any questions about that?
I do have a question, Robin, right? So you get someone on the phone and, after they say, well, I don't know, I might consider that. We might be interested in selling in the next few months. We're not quite ready yet. Can you kind of take it from there as far as where you go next with that? Do you bring your clients? Do you, presuming that this is really around real clients, do you bring your clients to them? Do you, where do you go next? What's your next conversation?
Yeah, no, fair question. So we actually, from there, we want to build value. So we're not really necessarily, I think sometimes we try and rush to close, but we want to build some value there. So the first thing I would talk about is, hey, would it be valuable for you to understand the value, the true value of your home? And then now we're in the CMA pitch, right? So I would start with a CMA pitch. I mean, if they're really like, yes, oh my God, I totally want to sell, then yes, I would talk about a listing appointment or an appointment, a one-off appointment to bring your buyers through. But in general, you're going to get an answer something like what Deidre just said. It's going to be moderately committal. And real estate's a long-term game. And I was talking to Colleen about her first year, and the first year is a really, gathering steam year. But if you can create these long-term conversations with a seller that may not sell for 6 months or 9 months or a year or 2 years, right? I mean, the thought crosses their mind when you're talking to them. They may not be ready to sell for a year, but you have lots of opportunity to provide value in the meantime. So what I would do is I would pitch a CMA. Like, would it be useful for you if I gave you some information about what's been happening in your market recently? And what's sold in your area, and an idea of the true value of your home. And some people, they don't like to give out CMAs, but to me, you want to you're a stranger, and to become a trusted source, you got to give to get. So I would definitely be looking at, kind of creating value with them through a CMA. Good question. Mark wrote in the chat here, how often would I recommend refreshing this data to stay in compliance with the DNC? I pull this right before we make the calls. So I'm not a lawyer, and don't quote me on this, but if you already have a pre-established relationship with them, so if you call them while they're not on the DNC and they say, yes, I'd love a CMA, and then you call them back to follow up on the CMA and they are on the DNC list, you have a pre-established, as far as I see it, but what do I know? But as far as calling people I've never talked to before, we pull right before we call. So if you were going to make this list and make some calls and then make some more calls a month later, I'd re-pull the entire list to do that. Also, I just want up-to-date information. So I don't, if people moved or whatever, I'd rather not be calling them. So usually I call this list within 48 hours of creating it. But good question. Any other questions about that? So and just so you know, you can use the same form, the same process to pull information from expireds. If you wanted to pull expired information, you can pull it right here off of Remine. If you wanted to pull for sale by owner information, and you can just pull likely to list lists, right? So even if you don't have a buyer in that area, you can pull the same information, right? If you want to start a farm near your house and you don't have any buyers near your house, you can just, circle an area around your house and pull, and then use that sell score and that home ownership time period to really lower down on, target in on some people that might be willing to sell their house. And then you can just have a conversation with them about the market. Hey, this is a crazy market. I live in this neighborhood, and I've been shocked at how much my home has gained over the last 2 years. Would it be useful for me to create something for you that would show you what's happened in this neighborhood? And if it's a tight enough neighborhood, you're sending the same thing. You're just sending market stats, really. So you can do that around, you don't have to have a buyer to do it. So for those of you who didn't say you had a buyer, you can start with your neighborhood and be like, isn't it crazy that Fishtown has done X, has changed this percentage since COVID hit? And that's a way to spark up a conversation. And it's just an easier call because you're not really asking for anything. You're just, calling to tell them that the market's crazy and your home's gained a ton of value, or are you interested in knowing more? So that's just a way to create some leads for free, because we can talk about paying for leads, but this is a way to create leads for free, and call around your buyers and create some value for your buyers, as well as fish for some listings.
Can I add two things, or actually add one thing and ask a question?
Yes.
So you asked me what, I don't see that class on the calendar in February. I did just put a link in the chat for everyone. It goes to our KW Philadelphia YouTube channel, where just like this recording is being recorded, this recording, if anyone wants to watch it again, just Google KW Philadelphia YouTube. It'll come up with our YouTube channel, and you can literally spend days watching all the things that have been recorded, and there's some awesome things on there. The link that I put in there is to the Brit Stat class. So
That's the one. That's the class I was looking at. Yeah, the Brits class.
It was just done a couple months ago by them, and it ties into everything that Robin's saying. So pick up that link. It'll take you right to it. I just tested it before I dropped it in, and you're good to go with that. My next question is, Robin, and this is not something that I do in the past. Okay, so my business is repeat clients and referrals, and however, this is something that I love what you do, and I actually want to use it for a real buyer situation. So I'm following what you're doing, right? And I'm kind of saying, okay, well, I have this little neighborhood that my buyer would like to be in, and there's basically a house right now that's hitting the market, but it has a pool, and she doesn't want that because she doesn't want a pool. Okay, so I'm gonna use this to help her find a place, and it's really about her, not necessarily about the listing. So my thought is to kind of take it in another direction than what you're doing, and really then bring that buyer to that property, right? So do you work it in that way? And, would it be a situation that you would get like a broker fee agreement with the seller? And how would you proceed from that aspect?
Yeah, so in general, you probably want to pre-establish that before you get them, because these situations, usually they're not leaving. It's not like a regular showing. Right, they're going to be there. The buyer's going to be there, and if a conversation is going to happen, you want to have had that conversation in advance, right? Before you bring them through, unless you have an ironclad with the buy side. So in the second half of the buyer agency agreement, or not the second half, but we all use the line, it's 0% plus X, or if there's not a listing agreement in there, it's 3% plus a dollar amount. Do you guys know what I'm talking about in the buyer agency agreement? There's two sections. So you want to make sure that with your buyer, you have this discussion like, hey, if I'm not able to work out a listing, if I'm not able to work this out, at least you're still getting the 3%, right? So yeah, this does take a little finagling when it gets there. You're like, listen, I'd love to bring my buyer through, but if I'm going to act as your agent, we have to have an agreement. Like, what commission would you be willing to pay? Blah, 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 blah. You can have that conversation, and honestly, a percent is better than 4% in that situation is pretty good. It's a one-off. You're not doing much. You're not putting up advertising. You don't need to get your full 6%. Personally, that's my thought. But you could create that understanding. But at the very least, you need to have it understood with your buyer that if you're taking them to off-market properties, that if the seller isn't going to cover your commission, which is the normal setup, that they'd be responsible for your 3%. So the worst case scenario is that you're getting 3% from the buyer side. Does that answer your question?
Sure does. Thanks.
Yeah.
So there's a broker fee agreement to actually do that with the seller too, but I was just kind of curious as how you go, like where you go with that. But thanks.
Yep. Yeah, I try to not dive too far into it because usually that relationship is really, really new, right? And and to talk about money at that point usually kind of spoils the conversation. So you kind of got to be delicate, and just know if you have an ironclad buyer side, then like you get 3%. It's the worst case scenario. I would try and pre-negotiate it before you get there, but if you got to feel it out for yourself, for everybody. But at least you're getting the 3%. But yeah, that's a great question. But to your point, Deidre, it is a significant value add for your buyer, right? And you're not going to sell a ton of houses this way, but if you sell 5% of your houses this way or 2% of your houses this way, it is a significant value add when you have to explain to a buyer what you do that's different than every other agent out there. To be able to tell the story of, I had a client that had a home that's dream home that they loved. And I sent that one person a handwritten letter from me that I got the information from Remind. I also called and followed up on the handwritten letter from the information that I got from Remind, and I made this connection for that. Like that's a story that you can tell that most agents can't tell. So I think to your point, this is whether or not you get a listing from it or not, this is a very significant value add to be able to tell your story about why Deidre Quinn, right? Like when you're talking to buyers, most agents just wait for you to send them a list of homes and then you take them to go see them. I'm going to be calling around your dream neighborhood, and I'm going to find everybody that has a 2-bedroom inside. This works great for 55 and older communities, by the way. This is like unbelievable in that world, because there's a lot of people that want to sell that aren't in a super hurry to do it. And so I've done this a couple times with 55 and older communities where she wanted a corner unit. There's 8 corner units. None of them were for sale. So you just look up the corner units. I got 4 of the numbers. I called them. I sent the other 4 letters. And then none of them wanted to sell, but one of them called me 6 months later, right, to sell their house. So it's a significant value add for your buyer. And honestly, it's how many buyer agents can say that they do this for their clients? Very few. And so I think it really distinguishes yourself in a very crowded marketplace. So I think that's a great reason to use it.
I love it. I think it's great. I think that it's great on the building your sell site, and I think it's great as a service to that buyer that can't find that house.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's really it. Are there any other questions before we get off today? I just want to thank you guys for coming and listening. It's really, in a world where we all want to achieve at a high level. The number of people who really want to put in the time and the effort and the growth mindset to be able to adopt new ways of doing things to grow is small. And you guys can count yourself among that number. It's really impressive that you're here. And that you're growing your business, but also kind of growing the way you think about your business. I think it's impressive. So I'm honored that you guys are here, and happy to share anything with you that I can. I'm going to send you my email address if any of you have any questions, and I'll give you my phone number too. Have any questions or want to discuss a topic or how to do things, or want to talk about, they get nervous about making the call and they want to go through the verbiage of the script with me, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you at the next class.
Thank you so much, Robin. You have a good one.
You too.